Living the Reiki Life podcast. Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Christy, and we're coming at you from the Prairie Province of Saskatchewan, Canada.
We met in the corporate world over a decade ago and became great friends. We started our Reiki journey together, and now we are Reiki Masters. Follow along as we navigate life living the spiritual world while still working the 9 to 5.
We gather twice a month to chat all about Reiki and our Reiki journeys, energy healing, and other healing modalities.
We are going to interview some of our gurus and cover a vast majority of topics that we find interesting, and hopefully you do too. Let's get at it.
Welcome, guys, to Living the Reiki Life podcast. It's Christy and Amanda here, and we're just getting into the spring vibes here. We're into Taurus season, my personal favorite season, as I am a Taurus, and I was born in spring, obviously, so I really resonate with the season and what it's all about. And we have a very special episode that we can't wait to share with you. But first, let's just dive into what's going on. What's been going on in your world?
Hi, Christy. What's going on with me? Okay, so I had a really cool Reiki session actually the other night. So I was doing distant Reiki on a child. And when I was doing the Reiki session, I decided to pull some tarot cards to get clarification on something that was going on in one of the chakras. And when I had my birth chart read, she said I should be using tarot when I do my past life regressions. And even just my sessions, use another modality just to, work with it together. She did that even too when she was reading my birth chart. And I loved it. I don't know how that would go if I was in a flow with an in-person session, but a distant session when I just had my own free reign and being in my own space, it was really good. I'm definitely going to incorporate that more when I'm doing distant sessions for sure. Because I can't talk to the client and get that feedback and get that bounce back. So it's just another way for me to kind of make sure I'm on the right track, if you will, especially when I'm typing out my report. So yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. And what about you?
Yeah, I love that, pulling cards during a session. I've done that as well when with the distance, right? You can't get that validation right away. So just pulling a card for some extra information, or even send me on, I might be on the right path, but I just kind of need to turn a little to the right and be like, oh, okay, this is about her career. Okay, gotcha. Or this is about something going on in her marriage, or, something like that. It's, a very helpful tool, but it's one I don't want to rely on. It's a great tool to bring in when you're kind of feeling like you want, some more support too, as well.
Yeah. Just kind of like that extra support when needed. For sure.
Yeah.
It's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. And I love pulling cards. There's always a message there. And I've been pulling cards for myself in the morning again. I'm getting back into a routine because I got a new deck I really love. And sometimes the cards you pull, you're like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. It's wild. So.
Yeah, that is funny. That new deck you got is hilarious. You should make a post about it.
Yes, I will. Yeah, the Animal Tarot deck. It's so funny. It's just an interpretation of tarot, but in a really gentle way. I sent a picture of the Devil card to Amanda, and it's this Siamese cat with a chain and a collar and a leash on it. And I was just what's going on here?
Yeah, so funny. So gentle.
Yes. Yeah. So nothing to be scared about. I think it's a good way to jump into tarot. If you're curious about it, then you can kind of get the feel for it. Because then you have the symbolization of the animals to help you understand what each card means, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Great starter deck for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
And what's going on with you?
I actually have a ghost story to share. I haven't had one of these for a while, which is a good thing. Because I've been keeping the house clear, just being really conscious of that. But, sometimes things creep in, and that's what happened this time. And I actually blame my husband, Troy, for this ghost coming in. It wasn't me this time. And, so I could feel the house was getting a little heavy, and I could feel something watching me, or the shadow in the corner of your eye, all of the the things that lead you to, you have an earthbound spirit in your house. And then I'd even have like weird thoughts pop into my mind that I knew they weren't mine. And I was like, okay, something's here. Something's got to get out of here. And I asked Troy, like, are you picking up on anything? Because he's super sensitive to energies as well. And he can actually see like spirits in full form. And he was feeling the same way. And I just kind of left it for a few days. I was like, well, maybe he's just kind of passing through, like, what's going on. And I actually forgot about it. And then my husband works away from home sometimes. So he left for a few days. And it's just me alone with the dog. And I had a late night Reiki session. I think it was about 8 o'clock that night. And I was getting ready for it. And Troy and I were talking on the phone. And he was telling me about a really freaky dream he had about the house. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I don't want to hear this now. I was like, I need to be in the zone for Reiki, and I'm going to bed alone tonight. It's like, I don't want to hear this. So I had my Reiki session. Everything went well. And I actually forgot about the freaky dream that Troy was going to tell me. But I went to bed that night and I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't know what time it was, but somebody was whispering in my ear. And it startled me awake, of course, because that's not something you want to wake up to. And I don't know what was being said. I'm not sure what the spirit was trying to communicate to me, but I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're here. Obviously, we'll figure this out later. And I actually fell back asleep, which was great. And the next day, Troy actually told me about his dream. I was like, hey, well, now you can tell me, like, what's going on. And he said that in the dream, it was like he was the eyes of the spirit and he was walking through the home. And the home was really dark and dingy and things looked really off and weird. And he said it just had such a creepy vibe. Like it just creeped him out so much. And I was like, oh, great. I was like, hey, this does not sound like a friendly earthbound. And then an earthbound to like disrupt you in your sleep. Like what a jerk. Like leave me alone, especially in my bedroom. So I went to the Akashics to clear my home because I find the best way to clear a house is through the Akashics. I find it to be like the most impactful and straight to the point. Like you're not guessing like, oh, what's going on? It's like, no, this is here. This is what needs to happen. Let's clear it, set the intention, done. And I found that we had a portal that opened up again in the house. It's like, okay, great. So that makes sense. The spirit came through the portal and it was actually a disruptive earthbound. So the worst kind, the ones that are a jerk and do weird things to scare you and like they feed off your fear. So that was the one that was here. And I just sent him on his way. I didn't ask him like, why are you here? What's going on? I just told him to leave and set the intention that he can't come back. And so far, so good. The portal's closed and I don't feel him around anymore. So, no.
That's good. Yeah, get out. You know, that's interesting about the disruptive earthbound, because when I was doing Reiki on a different person, like just the other night, there was a spirit as well, like in their third eye kind of hanging around. And I couldn't even really tune in and I didn't even really want to figure out what it was about. They just had this very dense, low, like, okay, really disruptive kind of energy. It's like, just go. Like, just off you go. Usually I try to kind of like get more information and relate to the client. And this one, I was like, I don't even want to. Like, get out. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
We both kind
It's like, I don't care where you go, but you can't stay here kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here. Yeah. And I don't even feel like they want to have a conversation with you. Like they're not interested in finding the light or finding their loved ones. They're just here to be an asshole. And it's like, okay, well, move along.
Yeah. I did call on Archangel Michael to help them move into that light. It's like, just go, just suck them in. And it was very resistant.
Really?
It was just almost like pushing behind, like, okay.
Because heels in the dirt, like, get out of here.
Yeah, look at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But yeah, they're the worst kind. And they're just, like whispering in somebody's ear, like, come on. Like, it's just, but they find it fun on their end. So off he goes. I don't know where he went, but
it's unsettling. Yeah. But I'm glad you were able to get back to sleep. That's pretty good.
I know like normally like 6 months ago, I would have been wide awake watching TV, scared out of my wits. But
Yeah.
it's just like now that I've had so much experience with this type of thing, it's like I know I'm the human, I'm in power.
Mhm.
You don't have any power over me. I know you're there. I'll deal with you later. Back to sleep I go.
That's
I got
right.
human things to do.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Good.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, should we get into the astrology update since it's my favorite season here?
Yes. We have a new moon in Taurus on May 4th. So we're officially into the Christie season.
That's
So funny. I thought about you the other day when everything was like brown. I was like, oh,
it's my favorite.
brown. So yes, Taurus is an earth sign. So this is all about getting grounded. I often think of our root chakra actually when I think about Taurus. So it's a great time to manifest money and self-love. Taurus in the tarot deck is the Hierophant. So time to teach, learn, and study. Great time to assess where you are at and where you are going. So, And then coming up after that, we have the full moon in Sagittarius on Thursday, May 23rd. And Sagittarius is a fire sign and is represented by the Temperance card in tarot. So, which when I look at the Temperance card, it always seems very healing. So it's a woman standing with one foot in the water as she's mixing other liquids into it, like a chalice, a cup. And water is so cleansing. So that's what makes me think of being really healing. And so it might be time to start like putting out some of those fires, soothe the heartburn, so to speak. So if you are hanging on to a lot of anger or maybe an argument that you had that's no longer serving you, try to like find a healthy way to release that and let it go. That's what kind of came through when I was thinking about this full moon. And I always kind of channel these in what I feel. So this is my own personal interpretation of this, but that's what I got for this full moon. So if that resonates, sit with that and it'd be a good time on the 23rd.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense to me. I love
that. Yeah. So should we get into our episode?
Yeah. Amanda and I are beyond excited to share this interview with you guys. She's someone that inspired both of us, and we loved watching her journey through having a successful podcast and then stepping into a mentor-teacher role after doing her psychic work for years. And yeah, we just had such an amazing conversation and like down to earth. It's great.
Yeah, she is beyond lovely. We were almost fangirling a bit before the session, before our podcast started. And it was just everything we could have asked for. So it was so great. And we know that you'll enjoy our conversation with Patty.
Enjoy. Amanda and I are very excited to introduce this week's guest. We are here today with Patty Davis from Wing and Ether. Patty is a professional psychic and has been practicing for 17 years. She's a certified aromatherapist, recently wrote a children's book, and is the co-host of an amazing podcast called The Spirit Speakers. She calls Northern California home, where she's currently focusing on coaching, mentorship, courses, and retreats. Patty is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to spirituality, and we are so grateful to sit down with her today and have a conversation. So welcome, Patty.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I wanted to apologize to the audience right off the bat that I have a cold, so hopefully my voice will make it through and you'll bear with me. But I'm excited to get going.
Yeah. We are so excited to have you here, Patty. We absolutely love you and been following you for quite some time now, and we're just obsessed with the Spirit Speakers podcast. So it is such an honor today. It's such a big deal to have you here for us. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
Yeah, and the Spirit Speakers, that podcast, I was thinking about last night, and I was like, it's like an encyclopedia of knowledge. Like, if I have a friend that's just waking up, I'm like, hey, go listen to this episode. Or if I have like a seasoned friend that like wants to know about like 5D or aliens, I'm like, hey, go listen to this podcast. And you guys just explain everything so well, and you share your stories, and yeah, we just enjoy listening to it. And I still look forward to every new episode that comes out.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. My friend Judea and I do the podcast together, and we've been friends for a while, and we would have these late night conversations about spiritual things. And then one night, I think it was she said, we should do a podcast. And we just kind of laughed, and we did it just for fun. We didn't really think anybody would listen in, but I guess this information was needed because it's kind of taken off, and it's been 4 years, I think we've been doing it, and we're just about to hit 1 million downloads on Apple Podcast. So our minds are blown by this whole experience, but we love doing it, and we have such a great audience, and we've met such amazing people through it, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny. If you would have told yourself 4 years ago that this is going to be a really big deal, right? You would have just kind of thought, oh, what? And it's funny how things like that just grow and just snowball, and then really, really, really realigns you to other things that kind of come into your life and then snowball from that. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We feel like it was pretty divinely guided for sure.
Yeah. And that's how our podcast started out too. I also had this download. I was like, you need to start a podcast, text Amanda. Texted her that day, and she's like, okay. And then here we are almost a year later celebrating 10,000 downloads. So it's so cool that we can share our experiences, share guests with the world. And it's like free education too. Like I've learned so much through just listening to podcasts, and it's just such a great resource for people. Like there's literally everything out there on podcast.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your 10,000 downloads. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I just think there's a thirst for this knowledge out there, this information. There are so many pockets of people that don't have a community to talk about this with, and don't have anybody to share. And they walk around wondering if they're crazy. So, we get so many messages from people thanking us just that they don't feel alone anymore. Yeah. So thank you for doing this as well. It's important work right now.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So let's get into your journey and how you stepped into your gifts.
Oh, okay. Well, we can go way, way back. My father was extremely psychic. He wasn't a psychic, but he was very psychic. And so it was part of our household. We called it his circus games. The phone would ring and he would tell us who was on the phone, or, we'd have a baseball game scheduled and he'd say, nope, it's going to get canceled for some reason. And oh, this is going to happen. This isn't going to happen. That type of thing. Someone's going to come visit us. I'm not sure who. And then someone would show up unexpectedly. So those things happened all the time when I was young. And then on the backside of that, he also had some pretty major things come through. He had told me that he saw too much too fast and that it scared him and that he had shut down. But he, like, for instance, his brother was an avid hunter and was scheduled to go out on a hunting trip. And my dad had a really bad feeling about it and begged him not to go. And his family was very religious and didn't really respect, his spiritual guidance or the things that he saw. But he told my mom that he had a vision that his brother was going to get shot through the eye on this trip. And his brother went and was indeed shot through the eye and died about a week later. So, and then we were a lower middle class family, and we would have vacations planned like every 2 or 3 years, as we could afford it. And one time we had a huge drive, across the country to see our relatives planned. And he woke up that morning and said that we couldn't leave for 2 days, and my mom was like, okay, we just trusted what he said and followed what he said. So we grew up with it. It wasn't anything super unusual. And I have 2 brothers, and we all ended up with our own gifts a little bit differently from one another. And I have always been extremely empathic and sensitive, where I pick up on other people's energies very easily, too easily. And I got to a point where I really recognized that and a need to be able to control it. Things would happen like, for instance, I was living in Colorado. My family's in California. And I went to the ER because I thought I was having an appendicitis attack. I had all of the symptoms. They gave me a blood test and sent me home. And then my mom called the next morning and my brother's appendix had burst at the same time that I had gone. So I had things like that happening all the time. And it was interesting, but when I started having children is when I really felt the need to learn to understand this. I wanted to be able to differentiate between what was just nervous mother energy and what was a psychic hit or an omen on something. If my children were supposed to go on some field trip and I was nervous about it, I wouldn't know if am I just nervous, or is this one of those things like my dad gets where I'm supposed to shut it down? So I decided to manifest a teacher in a community, and I was in my local coffee shop in my little tiny town, and I heard some women talking about psychic class, and I just went over and barged in on their conversation, and I started working with a teacher, and I worked with a teacher and in a channeling group for 13 years, I think, something like that. And then I got to the point where I needed to figure out what was in my own head. And I broke away, and then my business just started manifesting, and this is where I am today.
Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. So do you find that like obviously your empathy, you could connect that in with your family members, hey? And just like, do you find that with your kids too? Can you, what am I trying to say? Pick up more like in the body of what they're experiencing too?
Yeah, empathy, mine is not just limited to my family. For those of you that are empathic out there, we're the type of people that we tend to run on the anxious side. And I could go to a concert and I would be picking up on their argument over there and his sore back and that person being a little over, drinking a little too much and a little buzzed and they're about to throw up, and this person's headache. And it got to the point where it's really difficult to be present and enjoy the concert because I was picking up on so much, and it's almost like eavesdropping in a way, not purposely, but it's hard to just have a conversation sometimes or eat lunch when there's something going up and on and you're picking up on everything. Now, this is great for safety. When I was, in high school, if I was at a party and a fight was about to break out or something, I would know that before and get the hell out of there, or tell my friends, we need to go, or we need to move away from this area, that type of thing. So it's wonderful, and people that are empathic are extremely aware of their surroundings. They're very kind and compassionate and caring people because it is as if they can walk in other people's shoes. However, it can be overwhelming. And you can pick up emotions, but you can also pick up fears. And well, that's an emotion. But you can also pick up physical sensations. Even today when I read a client, I might stop and be like, oh, do you have a headache today? And they'll say, yeah, because all of a sudden I'll have a splitting headache. But I've gotten to the point where now that I can recognize where it's coming from, I acknowledge it and then I can let it go. So over the years, the more I got to know myself and recognize this, I began working with protection and clearing energy and recognizing when my protection had to be a little stronger. My protection at home is way different than if I'm out in public or in a group of people. Yeah. And this is the children's book that I wrote is actually a children's book for empathic children, because I had so many parents coming to me with sensitive and empathic children that didn't know how to help them, and wanted ways to assist them. So the book is written for children, but I have a lot of high schoolers that have messaged me, and even adults thanking me for it, and saying that there are pointers in there that have helped them. So it's for children, but parents can use it to help bring tools in to assist their children with their empathy.
That's amazing. Like what? Yeah, that would be a gift, especially if the parent wasn't empathic, and then trying to understand what their child was going through. And I've been empathic my whole life, and I always thought it was like something bad because I'm oversensitive or I cry or something like that. But going through my spiritual journey, I've learned that no, it's a superpower. Like I can use this for the good. Like I can help people. I can help people understand things, and learning how to, like you said, clear and your boundaries. Like that is so important to live in like a normal life, like, as normal as you can get being empathic. But yeah, I'm going to have to pick up that book.
Mm-hmm.
I'll send you one. Yes. If we can get to the point where we're an empowered empath, it's when we recognize our gifts and we are not victim to it. Like you said, they become our superpower. But, it's so hard because empathic people, we pick up on energy from nature. We pick up on energy from the weather, the collective consciousness, all through COVID. Oh my gosh, I would wake up in a great mood and an hour later I would just be depressed and crying. And because there's so much energy flowing around us all of the time that it's hard to pinpoint where it's coming from. Sometimes it's obvious, you may have a friend that's a little bit on the negative side. And when you meet her or him and you go home, you're like, ugh, every time I'm around them, I feel terrible. There's those obvious things, but sometimes we honestly have no idea what we're being affected by or where it's coming from. And we just have to work with it. But it's, I think empaths have such a depth to their life.
Yes.
We're seeing everything and picking up on everything in such a deep and intimate level. When we talk to somebody, even if it's, the checkout person at the grocery store, it's almost as if we're having an intimate connection with them because we're picking up on so much about them. So it can be a lot and it can be overwhelming, but it's really beautiful and, just helps our life be really colorful,
I find having that empathy in your pocket, like that for me is the best thing when I'm doing Reiki on a client. Because I'll have those physical sensations in my body too, like, oh, my knees hurt or things like that. Even the feelings of like sadness or, heartbreak in the heart or things like that. So I love that in that aspect. But when I'm out in public, like I can kind of turn that off. Like I'll put up a shield and I'll just try not to tune in. I almost just kind of retract my energy from them. Do you have any tips for when you're out in public, like at a concert, that others could kind of use?
Yes, I think this is a personal thing. We all have our gifts. We all have our unique gifts. Some of us are sensory based people. Some are visual. Some are auditory. So if we can come up with a visual or a sensory experience or something that fits us that can help us as a protection field, I think that's best. Like, for instance, I am extremely visual. So I visualize that my aura is expanding and it's nice and big and bright. And then it's almost like the outer layer is a little thicker, and it becomes, my energy field around me becomes kind of gelatinous. And for me, what this is anything that's coming in from the outside. If my aura is radiating out, let's say 3 to 4 feet, something that's coming in that hits the outside of my aura, it's going to like ripple in, and I'm going to be like, oh, that's interesting. What is that? Or I'm going to be like, oh, hell no, and push it back out. So for me, it becomes that way. Some people like to put a webbing of light around them, a force field, imagine their energy flickering out. I'm such a visual person that for so many years when I taught classes and did meditations, I would say, visualize that this is happening, and then I had clients that explained to me. And when I read them, there are people out there that can't visualize things. It doesn't work for them at all. So there are, sadly, there are people that are trying to visualize things and that's not their specialty. That's not how they perceive information. So when I do meditations now, I say, visualize, imagine, sense, or experience. And I hope that kind of covers it. So you need to know yourself. And then you find what works for you. When I first took classes, they were suggesting one of those glass, I think they're called like a bell jar or something, that go over like an antique clock. Oh. And I'm kind of claustrophobic and I'm like, oh, no way could I put that around me, so that didn't work for me. So what works for me may not work for you, but it's meditating on it, asking for guidance, doing a few things, testing it out, seeing what works and what doesn't work, and going from there.
Yeah, it's definitely trial and error. Because I know one time I heard about like the mirror effect, like put the mirror around you so everything gets reflected back to that person. But that didn't work out well because then they were reflecting back to me. And then it was just not good. But now I've gotten to the point where I step into like a Merkaba, and then I just have like this shield all around me, all corners. And that's where I found my happy place. So I guess it would be different with everyone and how they experience the world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The mirror, I don't like the mirror. I kind of feel like we have a sensitive spot at the base of our skull in the back where we can take in psychic attacks or negative energy. And I have at times put a little bit of a mirror there if I'm being attacked by someone specifically. My friend hangs a disco ball there, so everything shines. But if we're covering ourselves with a mirror, we want to absorb some energy. When we connect with people, that's beautiful. And that's how we interact, is by our energy fields coinciding and crossing one another. And especially if you're in the healing, healing modalities and the healing arts, that's a gift. That's a way that you read between the lines, that you help people. And if you're blocking that by mirroring it back, they're not going to receive anything from you, and you're not going to be able to alchemize or transform their energy if it's all just shooting back. But that's my personal experience. If you use a mirror, anybody out there, and it works for you, continue. That's great. But you might want to take a look at that, because I think sometimes it can come up as too much of a protection. Just like I've read people that have a block wall and a huge metal door in front of them. And I'm like, is this really necessary? Can we take this down a notch? Because maybe at some point in their life, they did need that. Maybe it is a child before they had a better awareness of the world and how they pick up on things. But it also can block us from receiving spiritual information and love and kindness. And so we want to monitor our protection and make sure that it's appropriate as well as successful.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard a really good thing about someone who visualizes like a clear bubble around them, but there's little holes to let in the good, because they don't want to push out the bad and the good. You still need that good stuff to come through, and that other energy. So I always visualize that too. That really stuck with me personally. But you're right,
Yeah.
you have to get to know yourself.
Yeah, that's great. I think starting with the aura is maybe the first thing. So our aura is our personal energetic field that's around us. It radiates outwards. They used to say if it was healthy, it should be 3 to 4 feet. Now some people are saying 10 feet. And it's so interesting because they're taking some of like the photography from NASA, and you can have aura photographs done, and they can actually get on film the energy that flows from heart to heart between people that are in love. And it's fascinating. So I have read people that have had the most brilliant, bright aura, but it's like 2 inches out, kind of thing. And that's our safety zone. And this is why, and it radiates out all the way around us. If somebody walks up behind you, even if you don't hear them, you know how you'll sense somebody's up behind you. It's because they're crossing your energy field. And this is also why sometimes, people were like, whoa, step back, dude, give us some space. It's too much. So if our aura is tight, when something comes in, it's almost like it hits us. If it hits us 2 feet in front of our face, it can put us in that fight or flight, and trigger anxiety or overwhelm. If our aura is out 3 to 4 feet and it comes in there, then it's a buffer zone. It gives us a chance to, again, recognize what's coming in, and make a decision on how we're going to relate to that and what our reaction is going to be. But with empaths, because we're so sensitive, it's almost as if a lot of times we don't want to be a light to the bugs. So we keep our aura nice and tight. Like if people don't notice me, I'm not going to pick up on everything, and then we're sacrificing our protection, which is actually doing the opposite of what we need. So I like to tell people, turn up your inner dimmer switch, like 10% at a time. Like I'm going to be 10% bigger and brighter today and just see what happens. And yes, you may get more attention, but like attracts like. And if you're light and bright and positive, you're going to find, a $10 bill on the ground. People are going to compliment you on what you're wearing today. You're going to have an amazing conversation with the person next to you at the gas station. It can really, it kind of allows us to slowly start to build that up until we feel comfortable and we recognize that we're not protecting ourselves by keeping our aura tight. We're actually doing the opposite.
Wow. I really love that. The dimmer switch. It's working with that and just finding that happy medium. That's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah. And when I'm walking and my shoulders are back and my heart is out and presented, I'm feeling good because I'm walking like that. And you're right. You will get compliments. People will they'll see that out of you. They see that like bright light, and the rest, it does attract like, and everything else snowballs and feels even better. Like when you can get in that mode, not that you need to live there. I don't know if that's possible to live there all the time, but gosh, just embrace that great energy when you're in it. It feels amazing.
It does. And it's the same thing when we're having a bad day or we are feeling ill. When we're sick, our inclination is to roll up in the fetal position and hide under a blanket, and we're doing that energetically. We're bringing all our energy back in like, I can't deal with anything in the outside world. So we're shutting everything off. However, what we really should be doing is opening up to healing energy, bringing in light, opening our crown and bringing in our highest self and running healing energy through our bodies and opening our chakras and kind of doing the opposite. We should be trying to bring light in to kind of counteract some of that darker, lower vibrational frequency we're in, but we're in the habit of doing the opposite. So yeah, it works both ways. It's interesting.
Yeah, definitely it does. Patty, I wanted to get into that. So you are a psychic medium and you've been actively practicing that for 17 years now. When did you start making that like your own business? And then do you have any tips for other people who are trying to develop those gifts as well?
Sure. I was an interior designer and I'm also an artist, and I was having art shows, and then I had my psychic gifts, and I was in that place where I was like, what do I want to do with my life? I felt like I was doing all three kind of half-assed. And so, and this is truly the first time that I've ever done this fully. I just thought, I can't do any more pro-con lists. It's driving me insane. I'm just going to offer it up to my guys. So it's like I put it all in a pretty package and I threw it over my shoulder and I said, you tell me what I'm supposed to do. And I truly let go. And I'm not a let go person. I'm a little bit of a control freak, but I truly let go. And it wasn't quite a week later, I was getting my hair done, and I had a new woman doing my hair, and she said, "So, what do you do?" And I had never called myself a psychic. I didn't feel comfortable calling myself that yet. And spirit was just like knocking on my head, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And I kind of said, "I'm a psychic," and I kind of probably said it that way too. And she's like, "Really?" And she started asking me questions. And then she said, would you do a reading for me? And I said, you know what? I'll do a free reading for you because it would be great to practice. And so I did a reading for her. And then I did a reading for her boyfriend. And then I did a reading for his cousin. And then I did a reading for her mom. And and I live in a small community, and it just started blossoming and going from there. And I had done a lot of readings within my class situation. I just hadn't done any for the public. So, and it just started taking off, like crazily taking off. And so I just trusted that and I kind of went with it. And it's been amazing. Like I meet the most amazing people. And every time I do a reading for somebody or teach a class, I learn something. And spirit will be telling somebody something through me, and they'll be tapping me on the shoulder, like, pay attention. This is for you too. And I've had, people's loved ones on the other side come through and explain things to us. And I just feel so blessed to have done this. It's just been amazing. Such a beautiful career, and I remember telling my therapist, I just want a job where I get to meet interesting people, like an intimate way, not like casual and this cannot be any more intimate, so it's, it's just been a full blessing and such an education. And I have such a full life, by doing this. My husband always says, well, you don't have a boring life, Patty. I'm like, true that.
That's the best. That's like, I think about that too, because I work 9 to 5, and I'm just every day I'm like, I'm not meant to do this. Like I'm not meant for this boring life, like doing the same thing over and over again. It's like, oh, but yeah, that's a huge inspiration to Amanda and I to watch somebody have a career in doing spirituality and helping people and building those intimate relationships. Like that is something that I would love to step into one day. And I know, Amanda, you're on that path too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're slowly trying to make the transition, and doing this actually is a great start, actually. So yeah, we're definitely hoping to move that over and just keep working on our own gifts, and it keeps expanding ourselves, like listening to podcasts and taking courses. Like I know, Patty, you're pretty big on taking courses, hey, and developing and just learning and learning.
I think there's a fine line here on when you are doing too much. I found myself at one point, I was working with a holistic physician. I had a therapist. I was working with an Ayurvedic doctor. I was taking psychic courses. I was taking aromatherapy courses. I can't remember. I was doing all of these things. And at one point, I stopped and I said, I don't know what are my thoughts anymore and what are other people's thoughts anymore. And that's when I quit my psychic classes after all that time. And I quit everything. And this is about the same time that I offered it up to spirit. So we're all seekers, and most of us are seekers, and we're trying to find the way. And I think courses and classes are wonderful. However, at one point you need to stop seeking and find yourself. And I think a lot of times people get stuck where they're continually taking classes instead of pausing and being like, what does this mean to me? Does this even resonate with me? What do I do with this? And maybe you're not supposed to do anything with it. That's kind of a human thing, is we want to do something with everything. But, we need to process it or absorb it, or why was I called to take this course? And am I really being guided to this, or has this become a habit? So,
Right.
I think it's important, but I think it can be overdone as well. And it can actually be a block in some ways, where we can block what we're feeling and what we're being called to do just by seeking and learning and learning and learning, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Christy and I have both have been caught up with that, where you look up to somebody so much. So you start to develop like an habit what their beliefs are. And you do kind of lose sight of your own. It's almost like even a relationship, really. You all of a sudden start watching all the shows that they like. And then when you break up, you're like, wait, I don't even like this. Why am I watching this? And then you start to find yourself again. And people really do need to take a step back. I guess that's why meditation is really the best thing always, because you're sitting with yourself, you're connecting with your own guides, no outside noise. And then you're figuring out, okay, well, what am I meant to do? And what do I like? Just because, my friend really likes to do house clearings, I don't like going into people's houses. Why am I looking into that? You're like, I'm going to keep sticking with what I like and what's calling to me and listening to my own true purpose.
Yeah. And sometimes we take a course and we hate it and we're like, okay, good to know, kind of thing. But yeah. So, I think it's important that any courses that you take, anybody that mentors you or that you work with, they should allow you to be you. Like even in chakras, which, is something that's been here for, hundreds and hundreds of years. I tell people, the crown chakra is usually purple, white, or gold. If you go into the crown chakra and you see yellow or you see green, go with it. Don't think, oh, I'm doing it wrong, because again, this is a human's interpretation of how that's set up. And maybe most people follow that, but you need to do what's right for you. And you need to listen to what people tell you and only take in what feels right or what resonates with you and block out what doesn't, because nothing is written in stone. And we're all just finding our way, and it's the way we see it. And even as a teacher, you should be respected by seeing things the way you see it and given that freedom and that respect. So I think that's a big red flag if anybody's taking a course where like, no, this is the way it is, that's wrong, blah, 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 especially when it comes to spirituality, because there's no rules and nothing is black and white in spirituality.
Yeah, that's right. And I took a mediumship course a couple years ago, and I'm very clairvoyant, and the teacher wasn't. And she would always shut me down to the point where I was like questioning what I was seeing. And I was like, hey, this isn't right. So I finished the course, but I just kind of took what resonated and just left the rest. And yeah, there's a reason why I took it. I always think spirit guided me somewhere, but it's kind of hard when you expect like, oh, I need to learn everything and she's going to teach me all this. And then you end up not really resonating with her, but it happens. And we all know ourselves the best. And I think that's who we should follow, is our own heart.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe your lesson there was to trust yourself, and that
Yes.
was a lesson in self-trust. And the other thing is too, just because somebody is extremely spiritual, doesn't mean that they're not egotistic,
Yes.
or, and I've had teachers where they really held their students back because anytime anybody would start to get up to their level or start to really break through, they were not comfortable with that. And they would, like you said, put them down or shut them down or something that way. So that's something to be aware of as well.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We've touched on this a little bit too. If they're worried about your success, then they're not the coach for you. They should want you to flourish and flower out. Absolutely.
Yes.
Patty, you give so many readings.
do you ever not need that validation from clients? Like I'm personally in a space, I think Christy can kind of relate. That validation feels really good and it kind of fills my soul, to be honest. Do you ever get to a point where you don't need that?
I love validation. I don't know that I need it, but I love it and desire it and want it and am so appreciative of it. It just helps keep me going. If I get a validation, like if I do a reading and I get like a dead person's name, like I'm like jumping up and down, like, did you see what just happened? And I've had clients where they're just like, okay, yeah, that's my grandma's name. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. I want them not out of ego to be excited for me, but I want them to be like, look what spirit just did. Isn't this amazing that spirit validated this with a name? Yeah. And so, and I've had crappy readings, where I'm just like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. That was like pulling teeth. They didn't seem like they got anything out of it. And sometimes the crappy readings, I get messages from them that are like, thank you so much. That was amazing. I'm like, really? It sucked, but I don't know that I need it, but I think I need it to stay inspired and to stay positive and to keep moving forward. So maybe that's an answer. Yes, I want to be, my ego wants to be like, no, I don't need validation, but I ask for validation. I ask spirit to validate me on a regular basis because it keeps me excited and it's magic. It's kind of like if I get that validation, I feel like I just experienced magic and I live in the magic world a lot and work with magic. So I manifest it and ask for it all the time.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Oh, yeah, that's so good to hear your point of view on it. Because I was getting to the point where I was like with the client, I was like, did this make you feel good? Did this resonate? Like, you're just going through all these things and you're just like, okay, whoa, take a step back. And I had to check my ego too. That was a big lesson for me. I was like, okay, well, move yourself out of it. You are the channel, you're the messenger, and just let them take what resonated. But when you do feel that, when you hit the nail on the head and the client is like, oh my goodness, you really validated that for me. And I've been thinking about this since I was 5 years old, or like something crazy like that. It fills my heart. Like I will literally do like a little jump or skip in the kitchen. It makes me so excited that I help that person like that little bit. And just hearing that from that person is what lights my soul up. So yeah, that validation, it is great, but I guess it's not needed, but it's beautiful when it does happen.
Well, and that's why we do this work, is to help others. So when we see that it actually is helping somebody, we were like, yes, I'm in alignment. I'm doing the right thing. My heart just opened and expanded. Yeah. And when you're working spiritually, it's such a different judge of success. If you're working with numbers, you see those numbers rise. If you're climbing a corporate ladder, if you're trying to make sales, in the real world, in a lot of more linear jobs, there are goal points that validate you in other ways. And when we give validation that we're doing the right thing, it's by how healthy we are, how we feel in our life, how our joy is, but also about our clients and how they're doing. But at the same time, there's that fine line of that. I can't be responsible for everybody's life and joy and happiness. And I am only a vessel through spirit. And if it doesn't resonate with them, I can't help it. I can only do what I can do, and do my best. So, there's a lot of learning in that as well. I used to, I recently stopped, I kind of retired from doing psychic readings, and I may offer them with my coaching. I'm still on the fence about that. But, and it was a very hard decision because I've loved it so much, but it was starting to take its toll on me physically. It was just a little too much for my system and for my age, maybe. So I retired, but I would find myself saying this, like, oh my gosh, I don't have to worry about her anymore. Just about a client, or, oh my gosh, I don't have to worry if she's going to find love anymore. Oh my gosh, I don't have to worry about his job. And I didn't realize how much I was taking my clients home with me and how much between reading them, like I have a client that I read once a year and I'm like, oh, I don't have to read her. And I love her and I'm going to miss her, but I don't have to worry about her anymore. Yes. I didn't realize how much I was holding on to that. So doing this is not a job for the faint-hearted. It is an extremely stressful job. It's not something that you can go do 8 readings a day. I know people that do that and it's insanity. When I started doing this, one of my friends that was in my psychic classes with me pretty much begged me not to, because she said psychics don't live long and they don't, they end up having health problems because it is really hard to shut that empathy off, and control that, even if you are an empowered empath. So, and I don't know that I agree with her. So I don't want people to worry that. I don't want you ladies to be like, no, I'll cut my life short. But it is important to monitor yourself and not to get, and it's, you can fall into, I fall into a people pleasing mode and have trouble saying no. So I would be so overworked and answering emails, until 2 a.m. And so it's a lot of personal boundaries. But at the same time, it is, doing any type of healing, it takes a lot out of you and takes a lot of energy.
How many clients were you taking, Patty, a day when you were like in the full swing? I'm just curious.
I started out with five a day. And then I went down to 4, and then I went down to 4, 3 days a week. And then when I went down to 3 days a week, it's adjusting all of the time. But that is what I schedule. That doesn't, that's not the emergency call or the email type of thing. And I have a hard time, if someone emails me that their child is seeing ghosts and can't sleep, I can't see I'm sorry, you should get on the waiting list for a reading. I have to do that now. But for a long time, it was really hard for me to do that. But I was sacrificing my own personal, physical, and energetic well-being to do this. And it's really hard because I want to make everybody feel good,
Yep. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And it's, just finding that, your boundaries. That's a big one. And I did the most clients I've ever done like a couple weeks ago, and it was only 3, but man, it took a lot out of me. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that again, because I had almost like an energetic hangover the next day. Like it took me a bit to get back into myself. And it's like, was that worth it? Like I should have rescheduled like maybe 1 a day, like working full time and doing readings on the weekend. Like it's a lot. So yeah, it's just trial and error, I find. And that's so important to protect yourself and look after yourself as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've had marathon weeks where at the end of, it's kind of like I get a rush, and I'm working on higher dimensional energies, and I'm just going. And then I crash really hard. And then I'm like, what the hell, Patty? What is wrong with you? But we all have our things, right? So
Patty, I know that you channel, correct? You will allow channeling.
mm-hmm.
Do you feel exhausted like that after a channeling session? Or because I personally have never channeled the way that you've described it before. Like I think I channel when I'm doing Reiki because everything will just kind of move, but not the way that you have. Like, do you feel like that it takes a lot of your energy out, or
yes?
What would you say?
So channeling, let's just let everybody know in case they're not aware. Channeling is when we are allowing other energies or other beings to come through us. So you can channel through automatic writing, where you are scribbling and you let spirit write through and your hands just start writing. Or when you're speaking, I will be reading people and we'll just be having a conversation. Then all of a sudden I'll start just talking like, no, just almost like nonstop, and using vocabulary and wording that I would not normally use. It's a flow. It just starts flowing through. So for instance, if I am doing a reading and I'm seeing a symbol, I'll be like, what is that symbol? What does spirit want them to know? And then I'm putting those thoughts together in my mind, and then I'm expressing that to my client. When you're channeling, it's just running through, and it's like, as you're saying it, it's the first time you're hearing it. There's no pause. There's no narrative that you're putting together. You're letting it flow. So physical channeling is when you allow a spirit to actually come in and utilize your physical body. So they may be speaking through me if I'm doing a reading, but in a physical channel, it's like they're in my body and using my physical body and my voice to speak. I've been told that, when I channel, I look different. I speak differently. For me, my mouth feels weird. Like my mouth feels strange. Like it doesn't belong to me, which it doesn't for a few minutes. But I don't do that often because it is very taxing and it's a vulnerable act. And I have extremely strong boundaries around spirit, not as well around people, and really strong guidance system that I trust. And so they help me make sure that I'm safe and I'm only channeling what is going to be beneficial to me or my clients or my friends that I'm with, whatever, and that I'm safe. So channeling is not something that you just, oh, let's try to do this, unless you've done a lot of work leading up to it. And it is physically taxing. I always feel a little shaky afterwards. When I'm doing it, I go into, as energy's coming in, it's a different vibrational frequency than my own. So as it's entering my physical body, I personally tend to kind of shake. Almost looks like I'm having a little bit of a seizure, just because it's kind of like two energies are coinciding. When I first started channeling in class, I would bawl the whole time, and they'd be like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can't help it." I just would, like, tears would just be running. And I wasn't sad. There wasn't an emotional attachment, but that's how it affected me. And now I kind of shake. So I have, I've channeled like a Lemurian, an ET. That was pretty amazing. And they wanted to come in, and I'm like, no. I was with a group of friends in Mount Shasta, and another friend of mine was running this beautiful ceremony, and I didn't want to like barge in on her ritual. And they're like, we want to come through. I'm like, no, this isn't appropriate. They just kept bugging me, and then they finally kind of slipped in, and just talked to us and told us about them and about what we're doing and about Mount Shasta. And it was amazing. And then kind of early on, I don't know if this was a wise decision. I was at a little gathering of two friends, and they're very spiritual and psychic women, but they weren't in psychic classes or anything. And somebody wanted to channel. I'm like, oh, this might be fun. And so I channeled this old woman, and she had no teeth. And that's one of the places where she was trying to talk, and my mouth was like, and then she was kind of telling us that we were foolish and that we needed to stop wishing for things, and we needed to be more firm in our lives and make decisions on what we want to do. Kind of a lecture. And I got done, and I stopped, and I looked at my friends, and they were both like sitting there with their eyes wide and their mouths hanging open. And my one friend is like, Patty, what the beep, And I'm like, oh, I think it was an old woman. And they're just like, and my one friend said, do not ever do that again. And then, she did not like it, but they're like, what was wrong with your mouth? And I'm like, I had no teeth. And they're like, you didn't even look like you. You didn't sound like you. So they didn't like that, and that was not an appropriate, now that I look back on it, this was many, many, many years ago. It was probably not appropriate for me to do that. So I have channeled Jesus before, which was a trip. Because we did that in class, and I did not want to do that because at the time I was pretty anti-Christian, just because of some personal things in my own life. And he came through, and now I see him not in the biblical sense, but as just an amazing guru that was here that, and I work with him when I need really high energy healing light, or so that me channeling him changed my entire view of and my entire relationship with him. So, it's not something I do regularly. I wouldn't say that I enjoy it, but it's tapping in spiritually in a really unique way. And I can't get information as clearly otherwise as I can when channeling.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
When I'm connecting in with like mediumship still, I cry like that as well. Like if I'm really connected in with somebody who's coming through, I can't help but cry either. And I'm trying to almost remove myself. I don't know if that's just the empath part of me. My whole heart feels like it could explode. And then just emotion gets over me, and I'm delivering this message, and I'm just bawling. And I'm sure trying to find, I guess, a way to separate that, but I don't know if I need to. I don't know. That's where I'm at right now. So the
Yeah.
crying thing I really related to.
Yeah. I still cry when I do mediumship, just because tapping into that vibrational frequency of love is moving, and I warn my clients, I'm like, I might cry. You may be sitting there just fine, and I might be crying, or we may be bawling, and that's fine, because things just come through. Or if I'm reading somebody and I'm connecting with their inner child and abuse and trauma that they went through, sometimes I start crying, and I can't help it. But I was like the anti-crier. I was one of those people that my emotions when I grew up where it was okay to be happy and it was okay to be angry, but sadness wasn't really something that was attractive, move on kind of thing. So I was okay with being pissed off or being super happy. Anything in between, I didn't jive with. And, I had friends being like, your grandmother, your person just died. Could you just shed a tear? It just wasn't, I felt weak doing that because of some things in childhood. But then I started having some heart issues and really working with my heart chakra and opening up my heart chakra. I cry all the time now. Like I will just be in the middle of a meditation at a retreat and start bawling. I can't help it. And it's totally unlike me, but I feel like it's healing for me. So I try not to block it and I try not to move it. And for me personally, if I'm having a reading with somebody and they're very composed and your dead grandmother is here, she really, really loves you. And if I have somebody that's like, oh my God, your grandma loves you so much and is bawling, that's going to be more meaningful to me. I'm going to feel more connected. So I try not purposely to not shut it off anymore. And I cry all the time. I mean, you've heard me on the podcast. I get emotional over the silliest things, but it's a heart opener and it's feeling deeply and allowing yourself to emote and express yourself emotionally. So Amanda, don't block it.
No, let it flow.
Yeah, let it go.
Yeah, I think it's great to be heart opened and just coming with your heart forward, like you said. That is good. I'm just going to let that flow. I agree.
Yep.
Patty, is there any amazing healing sessions that stand out that kind of stick with you still today that you'd like to share?
That I've received or that I've given?
Yeah, either or, actually. I would love to hear either one, yeah.
And this is going to sound so egotistic, but literally there are so many, which is why I do this job and why I continue to do this job. Because sometimes things that may sound small to someone is so huge for that client and meaningful to them. So, gosh, I mean, it's hard to separate those out and categorize them. So it's hard to pinpoint one because there have been many that I was touched at or through, and many that I've seen my clients really be affected by that may seem minimal to other people. But I think mediumship is where I see the most impact. If somebody has lost a loved one, even if they do believe that they are still with them and they're connected, to have them come through in a clear and profound way is so healing and so beautiful. And I consider myself a medium. It's not my specialty. To be honest, it makes me a little nervous when someone comes to me strictly for mediumship because there's no guarantee that who they want to come through is going to come through. There's no guarantee that they're going to come through clearly. And I just know how important that is to somebody. So I had a family come to me that a woman and her son and her husband had died in a car accident. And their religion and their culture was one that believed that you didn't bother people after they had passed, that you left them alone and that connecting them with them was kind of distracting them or getting in the way of their process. But she really needed some insight on that. So I did a mediumship for them, and her husband came through. And they come through different ways. Sometimes, like I said, it's like pulling teeth. Sometimes it's like they're standing right next to me and I can tell you what they look like. Sometimes they speak through me and they'll call somebody by their nickname, or they'll say something about, I'll be like, oh, they just said that's their necklace that you're wearing. She's like, yeah, that's why I wore my necklace, is because I wanted to connect with my grandmother. So it comes through in different ways. Sometimes you're there to talk to your grandfather and your uncle comes through and your grandfather doesn't. So there's a lot of things that depends on it, which makes me a little anxious because I want people to be happy. But her husband came through as if he were standing right here with some beautiful messages for them. And she was moved and crying and so was her son. And, and I said, I don't know if this is important, but is it okay if I share to you what he looks like to me? And she said, sure. And I shared what he looked like. And I said, he's wearing wired rimmed glasses. And I said, and he wants me to tell you this, and I don't know why, but he's wearing a light blue button down shirt, khaki pants, brown leather tennis shoes, and he's standing with his hands in his pockets. And they both just start bawling. And so then she gets on her phone and she shows me the last photo she has of him that she printed out and has in her house. And it is exactly, and so for me, I could have been like, they don't need to know what you're wearing, dude. Let's move on, but he was really stressing that was an important message. So for some people, it might be like, so what your husband wears is an important message. But for her, it was such a huge validation because I didn't know what he looked like. And he was standing with his hands in his pockets, smiling. And that was a photo they were considering using for the funeral stuff, because it was one of the last photos they had. So there's things like that have happened. There's random things that, like, one, and I've shared this on the podcast. I think people get sick of listening to my stories over and over. But one woman came in and I'm reading her. This wasn't a mediumship. And I just kept seeing lemons. And I'm like, geez, what's with the lemons? And I kept kind of pushing them aside and reading her. And I finally stopped. And I've learned to do this, to not ignore things, because what seems trivial to me might be meaningful to them. But I said, I just need to pause here for a minute. I don't know what the hell's going on, but I just keep seeing lemons all over. And she very, not much emotion, said, oh, that's because I told them that if you're not full of crap, to please make you speak about lemons. And I'm like, okay. And it was actually pretty cool. But she wasn't like, oh my gosh. She's just like, oh yeah, But I've had people too where a woman came in and a past life showed up immediately, and she was in the cowboy Wild West area. She's like, oh yeah, I told my husband if she's any good, she's going to mention my cowboy past life right away, and stuff come through like that. And names, I wish I got names much more often, but, somebody will be talking about a loved one and I'm like, is her name Martha? And they'll be like, yeah, getting the names is really, really meaningful. So there's been a lot like that where some people might consider that not earth shaking or earth shattering, but to the client, it really validates things for them.
Yes. Oh, thanks so much for sharing. And it's so funny from my experience. It's the stuff that I try and push aside from spirit is the message that lands the most. It's so bizarre. Like this one lady, it was like, she needs to write a children's book. And I was like, I don't even know if this lady's an author. Just leave me alone. I was like, I want to focus on what's going on here. And finally I told her, and she's like, I am an author and I've never thought of doing a children's book. But she's like, thank you for that message. And it's just like, if I would have kept pushing that away, it never would have got through. So it's just learning when to step aside and be like, okay, I just need to deliver this because they need to hear it.
Yeah. And sometimes things are validated later on, sometimes things are validated later on, or you get the answers later on. I had a friend she and I both went and got readings. And at that time they were on tape cassettes. That ages me a little bit here. And afterwards she said, listen to my reading. And I listened to it and it was so spot on. And she's like, that woman's a hack. It's so not me. And I'm just like, oh, she's not ready to hear this stuff. But it was so spot on about her and her negativity and, what she needed to work on. And, and I kind of recently had a reading where I was reading somebody and we were doing a mediumship with her grandfather. And he kept showing me a red children's ball, like the bouncy balls that we used to bug our parents to buy us. And anything, and she's like, no, that means nothing. And I'm like, do you have kids in your? No, we don't have any kids in the neighborhood. Does your dog have a red ball? No. And I'm like, okay. And then as she left, I'm like, well, let me know if the red ball shows up. And she laughs. And then she sent me a photo when she got home of a red ball in her backyard. So her grand was validating it outside of this. And I had one girl, this is when I was doing readings at my house, and she was leaving. And as she's going out in the driveway, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to meet a guy named, and I can't remember the exact name. It was like Teddy or Terry or something like that. And she's like, really? And I'm like, he's going to take you to San Francisco, on your first date, girl. We're it's 5 hours, kind of like, whoa, and we kind of laughed. And then she messaged me 3 weeks later and said, going to San Francisco on a date with a man named Teddy that I met, that kind of stuff. So those things don't happen all the time, but when they do, it's pretty fun and pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Those things you do not forget.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so good. Okay, so Patty, this has been the best conversation. So you have just opened up your spiritual coaching, which sounds amazing. This is really quite one-on-one. Do you want to tell us about it and what it's all about?
Sure. It is a one-on-one spiritual coaching and mentorship program. It can be 1, 2, or 3 months. During each month, we meet one-on-one over Zoom. And then you have access to me over a texting app throughout the entire program. And what this is this is starting where you are, and we're working with whatever your spiritual goals are. I've worked with people that are starting a psychic business. I've worked with people that just want to control their empathy better, with people that want to expand their intuition or have a better understanding of what their purpose is in life and why they're here, for many, many, many different reasons. You don't have to have any experience whatsoever. I have worked with people more as a mentor, that already have a healing business or a psychic business. And I've worked with people that are at the very beginning of opening their spiritual awareness or wanting to connect on a deeper way. So that is opening now to the public. I just got to the point where I think rather than telling people how things are, I would like to help people find those answers for themselves. And so this is helping empower people and helping you know yourself better so that you can get the answers you need from spirit when you need them and connect on a regular basis, but be able to connect deeper when necessary. So that's happening right now. What I'm doing is I have a wait list. My website is Wing and Ether. Ether spelled AETHER. .com or pdavispsychic.com, and you can get on the list there. And then I'm pulling people from the list as openings open up. So if I pull you now, you can schedule in July if you want. If it's April and I'm pulling you now, you can schedule in July. It doesn't mean that you have to start right then and there. It's just that now I'm pulling you in to get scheduled. So that's happening. I'm just closing up Witch School 101, which was a total blast. I'm also a witch, and I've been into witchcraft since I was 8 years old. And this is the first class that I've done, and it's been so much fun. And we really, went way into the history of witchcraft and the different types of neo-paganism, Wicca, traditional witchcraft, what the differences are, because I believe that if anybody goes into a practice, they should have an understanding of the entire cultural aspect and a full background on everything. So we went into all that and then ended up doing spells. So this is going to move into Witch School 101, which is going to be opening up in the fall. Witch School 102 opening in the fall, where we'll just be going a little bit deeper into some of the things that make people nervous maybe. But Witch School 101 will be a prerequisite, and I'm going to make that available as a self-taught online course soon. And then I have an empath weekend retreat. It'll be an online retreat for empaths to help you understand that side of yourself, to feel more empowered, to put up protection. And then I'm also going to do a psychic reading workshop where I will assist you, and you'll have a chance to practice with others, but I'll share. And again, I'm going to help you find your own unique way of reading, not teach you the way I do it, but I'll give you my advice and some of my experiences to help along the way. And then finally, this year in the works is also a support group and mentoring for people that are light workers or healers already. And this is like, how do we deal with that difficult client? What do we do if we bring an entity home? How do we fire a client? How do we pay our taxes? All of that juicy stuff. So those things are all being scheduled right now. If you want to get on my email list, I do not send out a lot of stuff. I only send out notification when classes open. And again, you could do that through my website. And it's also on my Instagram, which is at Wing and Ether. And then the podcast is ongoing. We put a new podcast episode out. We do our best to put a new podcast episode out every new moon. And that is spiritspeakerspodcast.com or at Spirit Speakers on our Instagram. You can follow that as well. We are on most podcast platforms.
And Patty, what is your book called, and where can people find it?
Oh, my book is called It's Too Much. And
I'm
you
going to
can
buy
buy
that.
Oh, thank you. You can buy it on my website through pdavispsychic.com or Wing and Ether, or you can also get it on Amazon. Here's something you guys may not know. When I sell a book on Amazon, I make 27 cents.
What?
Yeah. Yippers.
No.
So, putting out a book was really interesting. I was really adamant that I wanted this to be a hardback book for children so that they could hold it well. And, if I sell through my website, I make a few bucks, but by the time you pay for the printing and then you pay, all the percentages of everything, authors do not make a lot of money on their books unless they sell a ton of books. So even though it's really, really easy to push that Amazon button, if you have it in your heart to buy it through my website, and the same for other authors, if you ever are able to buy directly from them, they actually make a couple bucks off the book. And even though I didn't put it out for that purpose, it helps cover some of my costs for, having it printed and all that stuff. So, yeah, sorry to put that out there, but it's something that I was not aware of at all until I did this. Yeah. So it's too much. It's just a cute little story, but woven in the story are tools and suggestions for kids to help them through sticky times when they start to feel overwhelmed. I snuck that into a story because I didn't want it to be a thing, or have somebody feel like they were different. So it just is a sweet little story. Yeah. And my sister-in-law actually is an artist, and she did the illustrations for me. So it was super fun that we got to do that together.
That's amazing.
And just a quick side note, Patty, I was literally complaining to Christy this morning how Squarespace took like $4 out of my payment today, let alone what Amazon is taking. I was like, what is this? Like, you're just trying to run a business. I feel like you don't even want to tell people it's offered on Amazon. Just go to your website. Like, oh, I hear you on that. Oh,
yeah, the costs are real. By the time you pay for, the extended Zoom, and then you pay for your website, and then you pay for the software, and then the Stripe and Square, and it's real.
Yeah. It's real. Oh, yeah. Hey, well, that's exciting. I have a 20-month-old son, and he's pretty sensitive. So I'm gonna get that. I love that.
Fun. Yeah, my one of my friends read it to her family, and she has two small children, and then she has a high school kid. And she said that she was reading it to the small children, and the high schooler was in the kitchen making a sandwich or something. And afterwards, he popped out, and he's like, "That's totally me, Mom. I've been this my whole life. I'm gonna actually start doing this." Yeah. And I started crying, but it really spoke to him.
That's amazing. Just like when someone feels like understood and heard, and like some words to how they're feeling, like that is just so empowering. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So great.
All right. So we want to end this beautiful conversation today with a message. So Patty has a message to share with everyone.
Yes. So we are, without going too far into it, we are a time right now where there is a lot of contrast between the dark and the light. We are all trying to move up into a higher frequency. The world is shifting. And many of us are coming forward and finding that we are having spiritual awakenings, or, like somebody told me, it's like healers are coming out of the woodwork. And I'm like, yeah, we need them. A lot of us are being called to the front lines, so to speak. We're recognizing that we are healers, or that we are light keepers, or that we want to be of assistance, or that we're being called to something that we may not even know quite what that is yet, because it's not that, it's not the right timing for us to have all the information or the instruction. So what my message is that you do not have to be a psychic or a Reiki master or a healer to be a light worker. A light worker is somebody that lives from their heart chakra, that has love and compassion for everybody and sees everybody as an equal. And we need to keep our lights nice and big and bright right now. The brighter you are, the more you're going to be able to spread that light and help others. This is not a time, and Spirit has told me this isn't just Pattyisms. This is not a time for martyrdom or overly sacrificing or going into overwhelm. We need to keep our lights bright and take care of ourselves first, because the brighter we are, the more of a higher frequency we're going to carry, and the more we're going to help others. So find your bliss, find your joy, be happy, do what makes you happy in this life, and don't underestimate how that not only impacts you, but how that impacts your kids and your spouse and your pets. And then that travels out into their friends and others. And that just travels like a beautiful light that's flowing through the world. So, if you can imagine, if everybody in the world found their bliss and was happy for the same 5 minutes, the world would shift dramatically. So be happy, find what makes you happy, and don't feel that you have to sacrifice your joy and your happiness to help others, because it's actually very much the opposite of that right now. The higher your frequency is, the more you're going to help the world shift.
I love that. That was like straight from the heart to my heart. I heard all and felt all of that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. You two are so lovely. It's like, can we be friends? I had such a good time talking to you. Thank you so very much for inviting me to be on your podcast.
Oh, this was our pleasure. We were, again, so excited to have you on our podcast. This was a big deal.
Yeah.
We were even a little nervous. This was so good. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time, and we know you're a busy lady. You have so much going on. It's so inspiring to us as well.
Thank you so much.
1